afternoon, and welcome to today's Faster, Cheaper, Greener webcast series entitled Stormwater Management Incentives and Public-Private Partnerships in Philadelphia, Driving Affordable Green Stormwater Infrastructure Retrofits on Private Properties. This webcast is sponsored by the EPA Region 3's Water Protection Division and the Water Environment Federation, or WEF, and is a part of our Faster, Cheaper, Greener webcast series, which focuses on building successful community-based public-private partnerships, or P3s for short, for affordable green infrastructure urban retrofits and community revitalization. I'm Dominique Lukenhoff, Deputy Director of the Water Protection Division at EPA Region 3, and I will be your moderator for today. Thank you all for joining us. And for those of you who have joined us for previous sessions, welcome back. Before we begin, we have a few tips to keep your webcast experience running smoothly. If you are hearing an echo, please close all browser windows except for the webcast presentation. If you are experiencing technical difficulties, you can type your issue into the white box at the bottom of your screen and click the Ask button. The responses from our tech team will appear below that white box. If you cannot see the white box at the bottom of your screen, change your screen resolution by clicking on Tools in your web browser and selecting Zoom Out. If you would like to see closed captioning, please make sure that you have turned off your pop-up blocker and click on the Close Captioning button on the top of your screen. To complete the poll questions and survey, simply select the Radio button to the left of your choice within the console window and click Submit. Additional content is available on the Downloads tab at the top of your console. The Certificate tab is open to anyone who watches at least 60 minutes of today's webcast. Today's webcast will feature Philadelphia and its innovative approach to encourage green stormwater infrastructure on private property, including stormwater billing credits, grant programs, and public-private partnerships, or P4. You'll hear about pay for performance. There will be a 2 professional development hour credit offered for this webcast thanks to our co-sponsor, WEF, and the link will be provided at the end of the webcast survey. I'm very excited to say that we have the Water Commissioner, along with Erin Williams, 2 national experts, trailblazers, as I suggested to the Commissioner earlier, from the Philadelphia Water Department. Commissioner Neukrug, Chief Executive of Philadelphia's Water Utility, responsible for providing safe and affordable drinking water and integrated wastewater and stormwater services to over 2-3 million people. He is a national leader for urban sustainability and creator of the Philadelphia's Green City Clean Waters program. He's a professional engineer and a graduate in civil and urban engineering from the University of Pennsylvania. He currently teaches courses on water, science, and politics. Erin Williams is the Stormwater Credits Program Lead. Ms. Williams manages the Stormwater Billing and Incentives Program under the Environmental Services Division of the Philadelphia Water Department. Philadelphia is one of the leading major cities in the nation to implement a parcel-based fee for stormwater service, and to complement this billing methodology, the department has adopted a variety of unique credit and incentives programs. The Stormwater Billing and Incentives teams comprises both engineers and GIS analysts tasked with maintaining and enhancing a stormwater billing database, working with Philadelphia ratepayers, and pushing for incentive-based programs that benefit both the department and its customer base. Now, I'll just say that we've got an impressive number of participants today. I think there are 1,200 or more of us on today's call, and we're very excited about that. In that light, we may not be able to answer all questions today, but we have posted the speaker's contact information on the Downloads tab. Just to start, I'd like to give you a little bit of background on our Faster, Cheaper, Greener webcast series. And for those of you who have joined us in the past, you've seen a bit of this before. For those who haven't, you're going to also hear our speakers share a bit more background on this issue and on a green stormwater management or green infrastructure approach to addressing stormwater as an impact and rather rain as a resource. Stormwater is a large growing source of water pollution. I think here's a listing of some of its major impacts. Number one cause of beach closures, thousands of water bodies that continue to be listed for impairments as a result of stormwater impacts. The increased volume and velocity of stormwater discharges have essentially scoured out our stream systems, causing stream bank erosion and loss of aquatic habitat, to name a few. Urban flooding. As we thaw out here in the Northeast, it's the first thing that comes to mind is the flooding that we can expect with this spring. It is on the rise with significant negative impacts, as many of us know, to communities and economies. And, of course, the estimated costs of stormwater retrofits in the Chesapeake Bay alone, here in the Mid-Atlantic, and around the country, we know to be in the tens of billions of dollars per year. But let's flip that problem around and look at it as the growing industry and opportunity that it presents for us from an economic standpoint. This problem, and as we're seeing in cities like Philadelphia that have adopted these approaches, is driving new green solutions and, in fact, a growing green market. Traditional approaches for treating stormwater runoff have not worked. They've essentially created the challenges we've had today, or let's say they haven't been able to address the emerging problems. Growing local mandates for governments to accelerate implementation of stormwater control measures are happening across the country. Many communities, in fact, are opting for more affordable green infrastructure practices designed to not only treat and prevent stormwater runoff pollution, but also assist with mitigating for floods, addressing water demand, addressing and mitigating for urban heat island impacts, which gets into public health and climate, focus on resilient communities, and providing other multiple community benefits. And this leads us to why EPA and many of our partners have begun to look at an area that, in fact, I must mention, public-private partnerships have been around. Actually, they've been around before the people, planet, profit. Someone commented on a last webcast, hey, why'd you guys pick P3? It's already out there. They've actually been around for quite some time. And here's the definition: innovative involvement of the private sector through a contractual agreement between a public agency and private sector entity that allows for the private sector participation in the financing, planning, design, construction, operation, maintenance, rehabilitation, and replacement of urban retrofit facilities. They've been found to essentially be able to reduce costs to government by 20 to 50%. There is actually a council for P3s that also provides a lot of information, and P3s have historically been used by other sectors such as transportation, the energy sector, and we're also seeing in other areas like brownfields for some time, and including water and wastewater treatment. However, for stormwater, this is a new application. One thing we do know in terms of private financing is there's no shortage of money. As I mentioned before, Philly, other areas, D.C., Chicago, have invested and are driving this market with this greener approach. Investment banks, financiers see innovation in this whole stormwater arena as an emerging market, and we really are looking at a new commodity, if you will. Stormwater credit and contract trading markets are being established, are being pursued as we speak, and in fact many of you out there may be actively pursuing this. Some of the areas that we found from a number of the expert panels that we've held with folks around the country in looking at some of the models that we've applied. If you've joined us for the military housing model, some significant cost savings in the area of procurement, permitting, design, construction, and maintenance. So here's our goal. And I may say our partners at WEF and other partners that we know are actively focused on this. It's to highlight partnership framework options with the private sector that support a green industry willing and able to assist our local governments and their communities in the spirit of collaboration, public welfare, and trust to finance, construct, and maintain urban wet weather retrofit programs through a low-impact development or green infrastructure approach. This new decentralized approach that now needs to revisit our whole system. And I'm excited to say that Philadelphia is definitely doing that and is going to be able to provide us with their lessons learned as well as some very novel and innovative approaches to address a number of options. So with that, I am going to turn it over to the Commissioner. Take it away.
Thank you, Dominique. This is Howard Neukrug, Water Commissioner of the City of Philadelphia. I'm here with Erin Williams. I'll let her say hello so you can get used to her voice, too.
Hi, everyone.
We're going to do a little tag team on this presentation. You'll hear a lot from me in the beginning, and then when we get to the more technical and difficult stuff, Erin's going to take over from me. Dominique, thank you, EPA and Water Environment Federation, for providing this opportunity for us. And we're having so much fun here trying to get this program moving and to do, as this title, simplified title for our presentation suggests, finding and funding 10,000 greened acres in the city of Philadelphia. It's quite a project. It's a 25-year program, and we're very excited about where we are and where we're headed in this program. Let's just give you a very quick background on Philadelphia Water, and one of our logos is that we're a sustainable utility in support of a sustainable city. Our mayor, Mayor Nutter, looks at our city, and 6 years ago he said he was going to make Philadelphia the greenest city in America, and it was at the time it was a laughable statement. And today I am proud to say that we are among the greenest cities in America, and a lot of it is because of the work that's done here at the water utility, as well as our mayor's office of sustainability, which helps us coordinate all the activities that are happening at our park system, in our schools, on the streets, and in our water all together. Philadelphia Water is a public regional utility. We have 2,000 people who serve 2 million customers, and we do this over about 200 square miles of land area. Our operating budget is $700 million. Capital is approaching $300 million. And we're serving really all the region's water needs, from drinking water treatment, storage, distribution, source supply, wastewater collection and treatment, and, of course, stormwater management. This is a map of Philadelphia. It happens to be a 200-year-old map of Philadelphia, and the important thing to note here is all the streams and water. The big blue water to the right is the Delaware River. The smaller river coming into the Delaware through the center of the city is the Schuylkill River, and then you can see all the tribs. And Philadelphia was primarily developed as a water town with plenty of water power and fresh water and harbors for the city. This is Philadelphia today. Delaware and Schuylkill is still there. I'll switch back for a second. This is where we were. This is where we are now. Lots has changed in Philadelphia in the last 200 years, and a lot of it is due to development and how we manage water in our city, and very much how we decided to manage water over the last 200 years has greatly affected what our city looks like today. This is the same map today showing the remaining streams plus the main sewers that we have, which pretty much follow down the same routes as the original streams that came through Philadelphia. It's interesting to note that we call a lot of these sewers the Mill Creek Sewer, the Wingahaken Creek Sewer, after the original creeks that were already there. This is how we did it. To the left of these men and the new sewer going in 1877 is the Mill Creek. And as you can see, there's not much flow in there, and that's because there's not much flow that's needed for this great big sewer except when it rains. When it rains, this thing fills up real quick, and that's when we have our problems. In the past, it wasn't a problem because it just discharged to the river, and no one really cared about that at the time. Today, we really care. We recognize that we're having overflows from every one of our combined sewers, and we're looking to minimize that, put an end to that, and in order to do that, we have to deal with an awful lot of water. This is an interceptor sewer that captures all the sanitary waste from our sewers and brings it to our wastewater treatment plants for treatment. However, when it rains, of course, we have too much water and it goes out our outfalls. This is our largest outfall. It's called T14, well named. And you can see that people are standing there because it's not raining and therefore it's dry and therefore we can, all the flow is going to the wastewater treatment plant for treatment. When it rains, this thing can fill up about 2/3, 3/4 of the way full pretty quickly, and that gives you an idea of how much water we're talking about. And again, this is our largest, but we have 164 of these CSO overflow points in our city. This is a picture of South Philadelphia. Not the entire city looks like this, but it gives you an idea of the amount of infrastructure that we're dealing with and the amount of buildings and impervious cover that we have in our city. It's interesting to note that over the last 200 years, every square foot of this city, as it was built, and much of it today, as it is being built, is designed on a slope. It's designed on a slope to allow rainwater to get to a storm inlet as quickly as possible. And that's true for our roofs, for our roof leaders, for our sidewalks, for our backyards, for our streets. Everything is designed to bring water away from people, away from nature, into a sewer, and out into our river as quickly as possible. Underneath these streets, as you all know who work in other municipalities throughout the country, there are a lot of different utilities. And with this, we look at our sewer system, we look at our water system, our fire hydrant system, and we look at that and we recognize that the real asset that was left to us by the engineers and managers who came before us is that underground asset. And that in these difficult times, every penny that we have available, we need to spend towards improving and maintaining those systems. They are critical lifeline to the city of Philadelphia. They are what separates Philadelphia and its civilization from no civilization. So we created this program. It's called Green Cities, Clean Waters, and it's Philly's cost-effective, multi-benefit approach to managing overflows. And really, there's just really 5 points to this program that are really important for everyone to understand. And the first is that we've turned rainwater into a commodity. We started charging for rainwater. And by making it into a commodity, it's now worth saving, trading, using, recycling, infiltrating. It's worth something so that what you don't want to do with it is take it and put it down a drain. that would be wasting the rainwater. The second thing is that our program is based on 10,000 acres, removing 10,000 acres of runoff from our sewer system. You really have two choices when you're looking to minimize overflows. One is you can build additional capacity, and the other one is you can reduce the demand on the existing capacity. This city is looking to do the latter. We are, of course, have quite a bit of work that we're doing in the third bullet there to just optimize this incredible existing network of pipes, pumps, and plants that we have, and if you know, and to use gray investments to augment this green investment of removing these acreage of runoff from our sewer system. We could not do this green program today if we didn't have this existing network of pipes and pumps and plants. It is our lifeblood. It is what we need to absolutely operate and maintain and improve upon as we move through our time. But the question that we have in front of us is, do we build, again, this additional capacity, or do we reduce the demand on the existing capacity? And we feel that we can, over the course of 25 years, achieve 85% overflow reduction in our system primarily through the removal of acreage from our system. This is our vision. This was in the Philadelphia Inquirer as an example of what kind of work that we're looking to do, and really we're looking to transform our city, and we're looking to support our city. What we recognize is that as Philadelphia grows into the future and becomes more and more sustainable city, that only benefits the water utility, and anything the water utility can do to support the city in its endeavor to bring in additional middle-class people and jobs into our city, to increase property value and make it a better place to live, that only helps our bottom line here in Philadelphia, because as I've shown, we're spending close to $1 billion a year on capital and O&M. In order for us to sustain that into the future, we need a city that can afford its water utility. And to do that, we're looking at working together to make Philadelphia a beautiful city. So we need 10,000 acres. Where do we look? Well, we use the concept of one water, one city in many places. And we look at every square foot of the city of Philadelphia. We look at the neighborhoods and communities. We look at the transit systems and roadways, rivers and streams, parks, schools, streets, businesses, parking lots, universities. Most of the time we just put the word green in front of those words, and then we have a program. We have a Green Streets program, Green Schools program. We're working in all these different areas in order to create momentum, create energy, create designs that work and are affordable to manage our 10,000 acres. This work largely came out of our long-term control plan for our combined sewer overflow. We've been working on that since the 90s, and in the first early years of the 2000s, we were working closely with EPA and the state in order to understand how can we convert a CSO long-term control program into a green program, sort of what you're seeing today. The way we found that we were able to do it is we partnered. We partnered with groups like NRDC, Sierra Club, and Clean Water Action, and we worked with other foundations and other groups with the state and EPA, and really tried to figure out how can you really do this? How can you convert a city? How could you basically change the slope of a city, and do it in a way that's fast enough and large enough that it makes a difference and achieves the goals that you're trying to achieve. We began in 2011 with a consent order and agreement with the state, and followed that a year later with a landmark partnership agreement and administrative order with the USEPA to do the program that we're showing you today. This is really the base of everything. This is removing 10,000 acres of runoff from the sewer system. We call an acre that's removed a greened acre. A greened acre is equal to basically 1 acre of impervious cover, and capturing the first 1-inch storm from that. That we call that a greened acre. If we captured the first 1.5 inches off of an acre impervious cover, it would be 1.5 greened acres. We have set ourselves, we have adaptive management strategy with the EPA and the state, looking over our program every 5 years and making adjustments as necessary. But basically, what we're looking to do is over 25 years, green roughly 10,000 greened acres. The actual number is closer to 9,600. That's equal to roughly 15 square miles of a combined sewer overflow impervious cover area, which equals about 1/3 of all our impervious cover in our CSO area. It's quite a challenge, and people ask, how can we do that? And before I tell you how we're going to do it, I'll give you a little bit of an advertisement about why we want to do it. And this is a long list. I'm sure most of the people on board here have seen similar types of lists. But basically, what we're finding, and it's right now right at the top of our list, is the issue of extreme weather and climate change, where we don't know whether what we're witnessing is actual climate change at this point in time in Philadelphia. But I can tell you one thing: it's certainly extreme weather. And having the green infrastructure and the resilience from green infrastructure is something that's really beneficial to our overall program for storm flood relief, for combined sewer overflows, for MS4 management, and for basically managing all our water systems in Philadelphia. We're also obviously looking towards providing green open space and advancing livability and the public health of our city, increasing the market values and attractiveness of our neighborhoods, and reducing stream pollutant loads, which of course is the bottom line here of why we're in this in the first place, and creating this local green economy. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We're supporting urban renewal, enhancing the infrastructure network, and I can't underline enough of how important that is, again, the importance of the existing infrastructure and maintaining that system and building on that system, and advancing the overall citywide sustainability programs, not only advancing them but also coordinating with them. We're really transforming our rivers and stream corridors. We're doing fluvial geomorphology on many miles of urban streams. We're looking to preserve and restore habitat and, of course, maximize the return on every dollar that we spend. We're really looking towards this concept that Philadelphia Water is not only trying to make its systems fishable, swimmable, but fishable, swimmable, safe, attractive, and accessible. After all, this is where we live, and that's what we want from our urban streams. Okay, we're now going to talk a little bit about the different financing opportunities. You can take a quick cheat of where we're headed in this presentation. I'm going to talk about the traditional financing, and then I'm going to turn it over to Erin to talk about some of the other programs that we have. Basically, traditional financing for green infrastructure is using our public investment, but using it above ground instead of below ground. We like to think about taking the $1 billion of sewer tunnel costs and bringing that to the surface and managing the same type of capacity, but doing it in a way that also benefits the city. We're in this mode now. We're in the early years, about 2.5 years into our system, into our program, and we're innovating and demonstrating on public lands and streets, and we're setting aside money for 40 years worth of maintenance costs, looking to partner with other parties to do that maintenance. And we're looking at again, for the traditional financing for green infrastructure, the traditional funding sources using our revenue bonds, operating funds, working capital, and state revolving funds. We're also looking, and this gets to be really important here, is this public leveraging of sites, projects, and funds, and coordinating and integrating capital program. I'm going to step through that a little bit closer because I can't tell you how important that piece is. What we find is that if you go out on Market Street and you do a design to green the street, the cost is pretty high. I think you all know that. The concept here is, how do you do projects, how do you coordinate the rebuilding, the evolution of a city over time? How do you marginalize the green infrastructure costs into a redesign and rebuild of a city over 25 years? We have created a Green Streets Manual. I'll show you a couple of pictures from it in a minute. Basically looking at when we do water and sewer reconstruction and other public works projects, in the streetway, how do we return that street into a green street? And whether that's done by public and the water department doing water and sewer work, or whether it's being done by PennDOT or someone else, it's all the same thing. How do we move a street as we're redeveloping into green streets? At the same time, we're looking at our schools, parks, universities, and hospitals, which are 4 areas of growth in the city of Philadelphia at this time, and looking at a lot of change that's happening on those sites, and looking to partner with the school district, with the Fairmount Park system, with the University of Pennsylvania, Temple University, Drexel University, and hospitals throughout the Philadelphia area to do green infrastructure and do demonstration projects and support them as they redevelop and rebuild their facilities. Same thing with industrial parks, stadiums, parking lots. Those are big wins for us in places where we can find inexpensive green infrastructure. Waterfront development, vacant lots, redevelopment districts. The whole idea here is not to spend money solely on green infrastructure, but to integrate the green infrastructure into the rebuilding, into the renewal of a city like Philadelphia. This is a relatively simple but beautiful example of what we've done. This is a little stream that we created in a park with waterfalls and a bridge. And actually, it is diverting the runoff from the street rather than going into the sewer and into the Wingahocken Creek. The water is being diverted, going through a small filtering device, and then making its way down through this park in a beautiful setting. And what's not shown here is the small wetlands that was created at the bottom of this hill. Really, just taking a very simple project, fairly inexpensive, and beautifying the city, creating something new and something that's a little bit more exciting. We're also using money from PennVest, which is our state revolving fund here. We have a $30 million PennVest loan that we got in 2009. It obviously was early on in our system, in our process, and we were rushing through a number of projects. We ended up doing 93 that are now completed or in design, 200 blocks of green streets, 90 greened acres, and from that we've created this Green Streets Manual, and we've been holding workshops for contractors because part of the issue here is not only do we not know how to make water run downhill, but we also don't know how to build it and maintain it. So while we're going through this process, we're bringing in the contractors who have been working for many, many years digging up the streets of Philadelphia and getting advice from them on how just we would build the green infrastructure components. This is a cover of our Green Streets Design Manual. This is a brand new report that just came out, and looking forward to supporting other cities by providing this to other cities. And all we ask for in return is that as you look through it and as you look at our designs, you help us improve them and make them better. The whole idea here, again, is that this is a whole new business about how to infiltrate water into the ground in an urban setting, an impervious covered setting on busy urban streets. But it is not an impossible task. It's not an impossibly expensive task. It just has to be done right and coordinated, and we have to get the designs that are inexpensive to put in, that can be operated and maintained in a fairly efficient way, and can still look good 40 years from now. I'm now going to turn this over to Erin, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the other ways that we're financing and funding green infrastructure projects.
Okay, but sorry, Erin, just before you kind of transition, there's a little bit more business that I have to do, and we might take a couple of questions. But I need to actually ask a poll question because we want to know who's on with us today and get a better idea of the audience. And thanks, Commissioner, very much. We've got a number of questions that are starting to come in.
Okay.
Let's see. I think the poll questions up. I have to ask Amber, our technician. I just pushed one out, and let me go ahead and sort of go through this poll question. And please click on the radio button that best describes who you work for. So the first question is, I work for X. You'll get actually option of local government, state government, federal government, nonprofit, green infrastructure industry, academia, or other. And I see we're starting to get the answers in. Local government, we have at least 34%. State government, 12%. Federal government, 8%. I'll send a shout-out to all my EPA green infrastructure points of contacts around the country. Nonprofit, 9%. Green infrastructure industry, 13%. Academia, 4%. And other, 22%. Okay, was that Howard? The next poll question, how many people are participating in today's webcast at your location? Click on the radio button that best describes how many people are watching the webcast from your location. Just me, or let's just say me, 2 to 5, 6 to 10, more than 10. And let's see what we're getting. 83%, so most are individuals. However, we do have 16% coming in now that are multiple parties that are listening in. And 6 to 10 is 1%. So looks like a few folks have company. Now, just a few of the questions that are coming in, and I'll remind everybody that we'll go back to your questions because we do want to sort of keep the nice flow of the presentation. So here's one of the first questions actually that came in, Howard, was on your use of trees.
Right.
And maybe you can speak. This person has to be a tree person because there were some pretty detailed questions I won't go into, but the main question was provide some details about how urban trees are being used as stormwater BMPs.
Okay, well, trees are very important in an urban environment, and what we're finding is we have a lot of support coming from our Fairmount Park Commission. We have support coming from our Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, tree tenders, and a number of other groups, all very anxious to see Philadelphia become a greener city. With that, we have lots of years of experience of what kind of trees work and don't work in a city and what kind of plantings work and don't work. And right now we're looking at trees as really a piece of our infrastructure, and it's really three parts. We're looking at it 3 different ways. First is the roots of the tree, what's underground the tree, what's the system that the tree is sitting in is part of our infrastructure, and we recognize that as something that we have to operate and maintain over a long period of time. The next part of the tree is the ground level where the dogs walk and the leaves fall, and there we're looking for the cooperation and support, perhaps some behavioral modification of some of our customers and residents to recognize that a tree planted in front of your house means that you need to maintain the ground around that tree. The last piece is, of course, is the tree itself, and that we're looking at. We recognize that in order to maintain a tree over time, you really do need to take care of it, especially in the first couple of years, and you have to do some pruning of it. So there we're working with different opportunities to identify how best to operate and maintain that tree. Is it with our Fairmount Park Commission that deals with street trees? Is it a private group? We make private companies that we fund to do that? Is it a neighborhood activity? So we're looking at it in that way. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that's how we approach a tree. Again, very important as part of the urban fabric, and also a very important piece of our infrastructure.
Okay, great. Here's a note. Hey, you did such a great job of that one. We're going to ask you maybe 2 more. Would you speak further to the idea of marginalizing GI costs into redesign, rebuild of public spaces?
Yeah, that's my favorite question because it seems to be the most difficult part of what many of us engineers in the water industry are having difficulty getting to. I will tell you that we do quite a bit of water and sewer main relay each year in the city of Philadelphia, and when we do that, part of the costs to us is digging the trench, putting the new pipe in, putting the sewer in, covering up the trench, and then putting in a new streetway. Typically, particularly when we do sewer work, it can be curb to curb, and we can even go in and end up replacing the first block of concrete on the sidewalk. That's included in all the costs that we have done traditionally for the last 100 years in Philadelphia, and will probably continue to do for hundreds of years coming out. So the marginal cost is the cost of, instead of putting down new concrete and pavement, asphalt, is to convert that into a new design that captures the stormwater and manages it. There are lots of ways of doing it. There's lots of creative things to be thinking about. Some things we're already doing it. What we're finding is that the ancillary cost, the additional cost of going to a green street, is fairly minor and almost hidden within the cost of rebuilding a sewer. It's really, and again, as I said before, if we build just a green street without replacing the sewer, it's pretty costly. So everything is about coordination, and I gave the example of the water industry, and as the prime example, but obviously the same goes true for a community that's looking to rebuild a park, a community that's looking to take an asphalt playground in a school and rebuild that, and making it greener and creating education programs around it. It's all about coordination, integrating, and it's all about planning in the city. We have quite a number of landscape architects and city planners working in our city now, working for Philadelphia Water, because very much as we evolve our city, we need to be able to understand what's happening in our communities and how coordination of capital work really plays out. And as the designs become more and more structured, as they become more and more normalized, the costs come down, the contractors know how to do it, and our maintenance costs get levelized.
That's great. I was particularly, as you know, excited about the Green Streets manual, and we know through some other Green Street projects that just as you mentioned, the ability to better align the timing of these projects actually creates significant cost savings. So we're looking forward to your manual, your design manual being shared, and facilitating that, and finding out what others are doing with similar designs or other types of designs around green streets around the country. Okay, I'll ask one more, and then Erin, I'll turn it over to you. We have a number of questions coming in. We'll come back. How do you use GI in vacant lots? Are you taking the lots permanently offline? Are they city-owned lots? Do you have a size requirement? Can you just speak to vacant lots?
Yeah, vacant lots is it's fascinating how some cities don't even know, when you talk about vacant lots, they don't know what you're talking about. Other cities, and Philadelphia unfortunately is one of them, we have about 40,000 vacant lots in our city, and we're looking at, as a city, to create a land bank and to rebuild as much as we can and as quickly as we can throughout the city of Philadelphia. At this time, however, we do have a lot of vacant lots, and we have to be very careful about them because every lot has a history and has a future. And the most important thing for us is not necessarily to take a lot and turn it into a stormwater park or to take it offline permanently. What's most important to us is to manage the first inch of stormwater there. If we can do it through building a factory, someone building a factory or a school or housing on that site and managing the stormwater, that is just as effective for us, more effective to us than a stormwater park because it provides, in addition to everything else, revenue and a more lively neighborhood. However, that being said, there are places where vacant lots do make sense to be turned into a community garden, into a small farm or some other properties like that. And we're still experimenting with a whole number of different ways of obtaining the land, purchasing the land, leasing the land, and how we're going to create long-term leases and long-term understanding. But again, the really critical piece here is connecting the water utility and the green infrastructure efforts that we're doing with the community and with the city planning department and others, so that we're and the politicians and the city council folks to understand what the future is for these spaces. Because the last thing you want to do is spend good money on building stormwater infrastructure in an area where people are just going to be angry because they wanted to have a housing built.
Great. And I'm also seeing some questions come in, which may be a good segue, Erin, to you. For example, what is the best approach? And I'll just sort of leave that open, Erin. Perhaps you can address this in your presentation. What is the best approach if you are a company who has a green infrastructure solution to present the idea product, especially a startup that is backed by scientific data? I think we're starting to get some questions coming in as to how do I get involved, particularly if I'm on the private side. Are there processes being set up? So maybe think about that, and I think I'd like to segue to Erin now. Thank you.
Before Erin starts, let me just say the best way for a new company to get into this business is to open an office in Philadelphia.
And a very good answer from the commissioner.
Well, thank you, Howard. Thanks, Dominique, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Can you back up?
Yeah.
Just to kind of give an overview of what I'll be driving into or drilling into is really wanting to focus on, over the next few slides, a lot of the work in terms of financing and funding stormwater on private property, so kind of out of the direct control of the water department in the city. So first, I'd like to talk about our stormwater development regulations. Howard likes to say that it's a great program. We're privatizing the responsibility. These regulations have been in effect since 2006, impacting all developing properties in the city of Philadelphia that are basically disturbing more than 15,000 square feet of earth. So these regulations predate Green City Clean Waters going into effect, but we're really able to leverage the stormwater management coming out of this. The green acres that we're getting from the development regulations are key to our long-term green acres massing over the next 25 years. At the core of our regulations, we have water quality, channel protection, and flood control provisions. That water quality rule or regulation mandates the first inch of stormwater must be captured within the impervious or on the impervious area within the project boundaries. That is equal to our green acre definition. So every time a parcel redevelops in the city, we're getting green acres, and it's free at no cost to us other than low-level administrative fees. So we're looking over the next 25 years to see at least 10% of the city being redeveloped, and that gives us a great number of green acres. Since 2006, we've seen about 500 development projects be approved and constructed. That's equating to 1.5 billion gallons of rainfall that's being managed, being kept out of our sewer system. So again, wanting to reinforce how important these development regulations are to Green City Clean Waters and our overall program goals. And next, I really want to jump into our parcel-based billing program, our stormwater billing program that went into effect a few years ago. The water department has been charging for stormwater for many decades, since about the 60s. Historically, we charge for stormwater based on the meter size for a particular property. However, in the 90s, we were petitioned by many of our customers to explore a new way to bill for stormwater. And what came out of that process when we were engaging with a lot of those customers was a movement to bill for stormwater based on a parcel-based method, which essentially means we are charging all of our customers in the city for stormwater based on parcel characteristics, since that's more accurate in terms of the amount of stormwater that's shed from a property. the meter-based method worked for the time that it was in effect, but it was really just the most accurate way we could at the time. But when we had better technology, beginning in the 90s and 2000s, it allowed us to move to this parcel-based fee recovery, which has really set the foundation for a lot of the incentives programs that I'll be talking about in a few minutes. But this movement to a parcel-based fee was really based on and driven by being more fair and accurate in terms of our stormwater fee recovery, but also to be able to encourage stormwater management through our credits program. So credits are available to all of our non-residential customers, up to 80% off. They can receive up to 80% off their fee if they manage stormwater on site. And the credit requirement is the same as our Green Acre requirement. It's that managing that first inch. So if a customer has a 1 acre parking lot and they're not managing stormwater, they're paying close to $450 a month. If they install a rain garden and if they install porous pavement that manages that full 1 acre parking lot, the savings are huge. They're saving close to $5,000 a year. So that credit really provides the foundation and the incentive for our commercial customers in the city to manage stormwater. It allows us to partner with them. So now we're going to get into some of the incentives that really help customers move forward with these projects and get the credits that they're seeking. So what we've seen with our credits program, while the return in savings is great, retrofit economics just aren't at the place where they need to be for customers to move forward with these projects on their own. These retrofit projects tend to be very expensive, and a lot of our commercial customers in the city just don't have the available capital to really get these projects going on their own. So this prompted us at the Water Department to explore grant programs and incentive-based programs to help these customers build stormwater management and be able to achieve credits against their bill, but also help us manage stormwater. So it's really the ultimate win-win. We're able to help our customer base, and at the same time, all the stormwater management projects are designed in accordance with our Green City Clean Water goals. So we're achieving green acres out of these projects. We launched our SMIP grant program a few years ago in 2012, and I'll get into a little bit more about that later. Shortly following that, we also launched a Business Improvement District grant, recognizing that we have these legally authorized entities or districts in the city. They're bound together legally, so we recognize that stormwater management can often be achieved most cost-effectively at a larger scale. So these big grants are designed to provide money to these business improvement districts so that they can start a feasibility study to see how stormwater management can be managed most cost-effectively on a larger scale throughout the bid. To date, we've awarded 3 bid grants. 2 of them are almost complete with their studies, and a 3rd one is underway, so we're really excited to see the results out of that. And finally, the next phase of our grant program, we're looking at a project aggregation grant. It's under works right now, but we're looking to launch it in the next year, and we're really excited about that because, again, it's capitalizing on project aggregation and capitalizing on the cost efficiencies that are gained when you're managing stormwater at a larger scale. So our SNP grant program has been amazingly successful. Of the 2 rounds that we offered a round in fiscal 12 and fiscal 13. We're currently in our 3rd round. We just closed application deadline on January 31st. We're in the midst of reviewing. I think we received around 40 applications this year. But in the first 2 rounds, we were able to award 25 applications. That's 25 projects, some of which have already been built. So we're really excited, and we're seeing those move forward, many of which are in design, and the others are getting there. But at the heart of the grant program, we're providing money to property owners, to business owners in the city to design and construct stormwater management systems. That gives us green acres. That gives them credits on their bill. I mean, it's a great program. One key thing that's important for us is that we're able to get each of the grantees to sign and execute an operations and maintenance agreement that mandates that the stormwater management practice that is built on that property is maintained and functioning for a minimum of 45 years. And so that really gives us the backing that we need to count these towards green acres for our COA compliance. So just a couple more facts and figures about the grant program. To date, we've approved about $10.5 million in projects. That's a total of 145.6 greened acres. Now, these greened acres span both our CSO and MS4 areas in the city. About 60% of the city is serviced by combined sewer. The remaining 40% is serviced by separate sewer. Our grant program we offer to all non-residential customers, regardless of the sewer district. So those 25 projects amount to about 145 acres across the city. The CSO acres, I believe, are around 80. So still a significant number of green acres that we're getting from this program. And what I think is really great about this program is the cost. The cost of PWD is extremely low. We're seeing green acre costs less than $100,000 per acre, and the average from these facts is about $70,000 per green acre. And what we did starting our last round of the grant is that we limited funding to $100,000 per green acre in the request. So that's really forcing applicants to leverage other funding sources so that we're keeping our costs low to the department and really trying to get buy-in from other players in this market.
Erin mentions that a number of these acres are done outside the CSO area, and yes, that is of some concern to our CSO program, but is of extreme benefit to our MS4 program. So when we look at green infrastructure, when we look at methods that we can use, it's really irrelevant to us other than the fact that we have these partnership agreements and COAs with EPA for CSO reduction. But looking at our whole city the same way and managing stormwater the same way for an MS4 and as a CSO system is a very new way of thinking, I think, for utilities and something to be noted.
Howard, thanks for that comment, because there was a question to talk a little bit about how these efforts relate to your MS4 program and implementation.
Yeah, I mean, our MS4 permit, we have one of those as well, obligations to manage stormwater. Our stormwater redevelopment regulations, the ones that I was talking about earlier that went into effect 2006, really help in terms of compliance with those permit obligations. And any stormwater management that we're getting on private property in our MS4, like Howard said, is extremely beneficial to us. All of the streams in Philadelphia are considered impaired. And if you ever take a drive through Northeast Philadelphia and look at any of our tributaries or streams, they're in pretty bad shape. So any efforts that we can do on private property to manage stormwater go a long way towards the health and vitality of our streams, and certainly help with our reporting obligations and our permit obligations for our MS4 permit. So on the horizon, just given how successful our SMIP program has been, we're really looking to capitalize on the strengths of that program, and that really has been, what we're seeing is that cost-effective stormwater management is happening at a larger scale. So how can we make that happen the best? What kind of vehicle can we offer that really capitalizes on those cost efficiencies? And that's what I'm talking about with the SMIP expansion program. This program is still in the works, and what it will look like is really resembling a pay-for-performance style contract, or the P4 that Dominique mentioned before. We're looking to provide more money for this program. We're looking not only to solicit applications competitively, but also try to target properties and work with them up front and really make this more of a partnership. So this is something that we're looking to roll out next fiscal year. We're really excited. These kinds of projects we're looking are to be multi-acre, 10 acres plus, 20 acres, 50 acres even. The SMIP grant program is targeted for private property owners, and most of the properties in Philadelphia tend to be relatively small. Many of the parcels that we've received in applications are 5 acres or less. So this expansion program is really targeted at larger properties, or larger properties bundled together into one big package that we will be able to fund via a grant. And we're anticipating cost per acre, as low as $90,000 to $80,000 per acre. So we're really excited about what this is going to look like. And we're basically in the planning process right now, looking to roll out next fiscal year. Now moving on to some of the work we're doing on the residential side. The first two programs were mostly focused on our commercial customers, but we are doing a lot of work with our residential properties, recognizing that residential properties in the city account for a good chunk of the impervious cover, about 20%. And so any stormwater management we can get on our residential properties is great. But I think more importantly, out of these programs, we're looking for partnership and awareness and engaging the community to helps Philadelphia as a whole understand that stormwater is a problem and really get their buy-in about Green City Clean Waters. And we've piloted a residential stormwater management program called Rain Check, where we are going out and auditing properties, providing funding or subsidies to property owners who wish to install stormwater tools. As you can see here, these are some of the tools that we're looking to install on residential properties. They're easily replicable. They're easy to maintain. These are the things that we want homeowners. We don't want them to be scared by this. We want them to understand it and then be able to spread the word. We also have a Soak It Up adoption program. We're providing money to civic groups so that they can maintain and care for stormwater BMPs. We really want to engage local community and civic groups to help us manage stormwater. We can't do it alone. We have to engage. We have to engage our citizens. And lastly, another program that I want to talk about is our Stormwater Planning District program. This is an in-house program. It resembles the bid grant that I talked about before, but this program is PWD driven. It's a planning effort led in-house, and really it's kind of the same theme that I've been talking about earlier. We're looking to capitalize on cost efficiencies gained when you do projects at scale. So we are basically surveying our CSO district in the city and looking for large chunks of land, 10 acres or more, where multiple partners or programs can be amassed and pulled together into a high-level stormwater plan. We've awarded 6 contracts to date, totaling around $1.2 million, and the 3 that are really key right now is that we're looking at the stadiums down in South Philly, so looking at the Eagles and the Sixers and the Phillies, and what we can do with the vast, areas of parking and just impervious cover galore, and the runoff from that area is huge. So what can we do down there to cost effectively manage stormwater runoff? We're also looking at the American Street corridor, which is an interesting one in that it's an old industrial corridor in the city that's now being revitalized. The roadway is very, very wide for Philadelphia, and there's a ton of businesses, and there are some vacant land. So it seems like there would be it's a great project to see a variety of potential different stormwater solutions. How do we use the vacant land, if at all? Can we use the street? Can we use the private property? And another one that's underway is Temple University up in North Philadelphia. They have quite a few acres up there. We're also looking kind of to piggyback on what Howard was talking about earlier is jump on some of the capital improvement work that they're already doing. So getting involved in their master planning process. We're really looking to do this with a lot of the universities. How can we get engaged up front in the university master plans and insert stormwater so that it's at marginal cost and we're not just doing it outright? I think at this point I'm turning it back over to Howard.
Thank you, Erin.
Howard, again, maybe because we've got a number of questions coming in, I'd like to maybe entertain a few.
Sure.
For you and Erin. And here's one question on the SMIP grant. Is the SMIP grant funded with only stormwater fee revenues?
Yes, it is. Currently, our SMIP grant program is funded from our operating budget.
And how many? What's roughly the? I guess maybe this is a minimum and a maximum per grant.
So it really varies. That $100,000 per acre threshold is really what drives the amount of funding eligible or available to a particular project. We see projects come in as small as a quarter of an acre, or even smaller than that at times. They would be eligible for a commensurate amount of funding. So you're looking at $25,000, $20,000. We've seen projects as large as 50 acres that are receiving, a few $1 million. So the range is pretty great. We really try to tailor the program to be flexible so that, we understand that there are many customers that were impacted by our parcel-based fee and that are motivated to install stormwater management practices. They just don't have the available capital. So we want to be able to assist as many of these property owners as possible, while at the same time using this program to help us meet our Green City Clean Water goals.
And actually, that's where the question came from was, how much does it take? What are the thresholds to motivate the private sector to install GI?
Right. I mean, we've been doing a lot of outreach. When we went live in July of 2010 with our parcel-based fee, we had spent probably a good year or two, maybe even longer, I can't always remember, but doing a lot of outreach with our commercial customers, trying to inform them of the impact and seeing if we could get people to install retrofits up front so that when July 2010 hit, they would have had stormwater management in place. That way they could be eligible for the credit right away. And what we saw is that for many of the customers we worked with, they wanted a return on investment of 5 years or less, and even 5 years was kind of pushing it. Some people have said no more than 3, and perhaps that's because stormwater is a very new and foreign idea and concept to many of these people, and not willing to take as much of a risk. So without the grant funding, we were seeing paybacks as high as 10 years or more, which is completely illogical and infeasible for many of these property owners. With the grant funding available, which basically serves as a subsidy, people are seeing paybacks as little as a year, 2 years. It just makes the project much more palatable for these property owners, and we've had so much interest. It's been a really great program for us.
Well, and I think that's also going to drive the demand for our better, cheaper, greener designs and technology.
Exactly. I mean, what we're really looking for with this program is, over time, we've set this maximum threshold of $100,000 per acre of what PWD is willing to fund. But over time, we expect that number to drop because of competition, because of outside funding sources that are getting interested in realizing that they can jump in and co-finance using water department's money as a foundation. And also, just with time, technology is becoming, flooding Philadelphia, and then that driving the cost down. So we're really hoping over the next many years to see all of these things coming together to drive down PWD's contribution to these projects, and see other things really increase and stimulate.
So this is more seed money, catalyze that.
Yes.
So can you explain the mechanism for a parcel owner reporting stormwater improvements that would qualify for credits?
Mm-hmm. The major things that we look for, most of the time, these stormwater improvements, we are part of the design, and we are part of the design review process. So PWD staff, we are engaging with property owners that want to retrofit their project early in the process. Very rarely does someone retrofit their property and come into us after the fact. So we're working with property owners up front and working with our engineer to review the plans, make sure their stormwater project is built to the correct specifications. We're basically giving them clearance to move ahead with construction, and we're actually out there inspecting. So we're doing that for private development with our stormwater regulations, and we're also doing that with retrofits. So we have an eye on the project, and we're able to monitor it and make sure it's what we need it to be all along the way. That way, when the project's done and been built, when they come in for credit, it's really just a matter of paperwork. All of the verification has already been done. Post-construction, what's key to us right now is we are looking for as-built drawings. That's very important for us. We can review the design and okay that it can get built, but we need that as-built drawing to confirm that what we reviewed and approved is correct. And so we're engaged in that process all along the way. The SNP grant projects, they're getting built this way. So we're able to work very directly with the property owner and their consultant team.
So you provide a streamlined process there.
Yeah, I think the key, what Erin was just saying, is that with our stormwater development regulations, we are practically the first stop for any development in the city of Philadelphia greater than 15,000 square feet of earth disturbance. And with that, we're right on top of any real movement towards whether you're designing with stormwater management involved or not, it's still coming through our office and through our inspection groups and through our enforcement.
That's great. Well, so speaking of that, one of the questions was kind of, getting at the qualifications of grantees to do the work. And that may be a good segue, too, to Howard's discussion on business development and local jobs and training, perhaps. But if you want to speak if you can maybe speak to in that kind of assurance in terms of who's doing this, and also O&M.
Right, yeah. I'm glad you asked that part about the O&M. In terms of the initial project design, right now the SMIP grant program is targeted for property owners, so the money is directly granted to property owners. Many of the engineers and firms in and around the Philadelphia area are very familiar and comfortable with stormwater design because of our regulations that have been around since 2006. So working with that community, there isn't necessarily, a list of qualified ones. We will work with anyone that can provide us a plan. We see new engineering firms all the time that are proposing new ideas. What's been great with the SMIP grant program is that I think it's really been pushing the boundaries in terms of innovation. We're seeing new ideas and new types of stormwater technologies being proposed. When you are retrofitting an existing property, I think it creates an interesting scenario because you're really working with a lot more constraints. You're really working with a lot more limitations. As opposed to a redevelopment scenario, you kind of have a clean slate. It's a little bit easier to insert stormwater management into that. When you're working with, a parcel with a fully built-out building, there's really no space to put a rain garden. There's no space to put an underground infiltration trench. How do you manage the stormwater then? These are the questions that have been really plaguing our commercial customers, plaguing us for a while, and we're finally starting to see engineering companies, green roof companies, landscape architects come up with new ideas and ways to manage stormwater that we're really excited to start trying out. Blue roofs is something that New York's been looking into. We're starting to look into it because sometimes it's the only available solution for an existing building. And in terms of O&M, we're starting to see, I think for the first time in a while, we're starting to see firms either have dedicated staff to provide long-term O&M for their clients, whereas I think that the existing paradigm was a lot of these firms wanted to help design, oversee construction, and then they were done. And now we're seeing a lot of these firms also provide to their clients the long-term operations and maintenance because most of their clients are now applying for stormwater credits. In order to keep their credit, they have to keep their stormwater management practice maintained and functioning. All of our customers have to renew their credits every 4 years, so there's a lot of reporting obligations and just a lot of work associated with keeping those credits. So I see that as an emerging market here, too, and just a lot of the firms I'm talking to are providing those services more and more. We're seeing some startup firms that are just focused on O&M. So it's really exciting to see the new, the new services being provided out there.
So how do you, in terms of how do you enforce the renewal process as it relates to keeping the credits up to date, the O&M up to date? I can sort of see a third-party industry coming around to help with that, but what's the plan at present?
At present, what we're doing, it's a very timely question because July 2014 is approaching quickly, so that means we have a good number of credits that will be up for renewal, the ones that were approved right away in July 2010. Our vision for this is, at a minimum, we're going to take a look at these stormwater facilities once every 4 years. That's the minimum. We plan on doing the post-construction inspections in-house. So right now we have a fairly robust inspection staff that we hope to engage to get out and to look at all these projects and make sure that they're functioning and being maintained as they should. And that's kind of our minimum baseline right now. Where I see it going is really kind of shifting more of that responsibility to our customer base and to their consultant team, perhaps doing annual reporting similar to permit obligations. So, the credit renewal application itself is once every 4 years, but, in addition to that, we're looking to get a report annually, perhaps audit, random audits, random property inspections. There's a couple of tools that we're exploring, but a lot of that is still under the works right now.
So are you going to allow for citizen reporting? All right, I can go to the next question. Okay, here's one more question, and then we'll transition to you, Howard. What are the billing credits? Do properties pay a lower percentage, for example, of the regular fee?
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I kind of simplified that earlier, but our rate structure today is we charge every commercial property in the city based on two parameters: gross area and impervious area. There's a rate attached to each of those. I think that was in a slide earlier. We charge about 50 cents per 500 square feet of gross area, which is total property area, and about $4.50 per 500 square feet of impervious area. We have the entire city mapped, so we know every property's specific gross and impervious area, therefore we know their charge. The credit is applied to that charge based on the area that's managed. So a 2-acre property that has an acre parking lot, and that acre parking lot is managed, the stormwater charge that would be generated out of that acre is actually reduced by 80%. So it's a direct correlation and affects those parcel-based rates.
Great. All right. Now I'll stop the questions. Yes. Over to you, Howard.
Okay, very good. I'm just going to end the show with a little bit of talk about sustainable businesses and the work that we're doing there. It's so fascinating watching this business grow. When we first brought in Charlie Miller, who designed and built the first green roof in Philadelphia in 2001, 2002, and people just didn't really know if it was really going to work or not. Leaks, it's heavy, and today we have about 100 green roofs that are either built or in design or planned, and it seems to be a great way to move forward. And as Erin was talking, she also mentioned these companies that once designed green roofs now are provide the full course of design, construction, supply, construction, operation, and maintenance. And you start looking at how this industry is changing and how we're creating an industry, a green infrastructure industry, and how they hopefully are going to get to the point, because right now this is government that obviously you're listening to government employees talk about a very big government project and how we do it and how we design it and how we follow it through. But as time goes by, what we're really looking to do is really hand this off to the private community, where it's really not the responsibility of the water utility to operate, maintain green infrastructure or design and build green infrastructure, but just becomes integrated into the business of the city and anybody who's doing any kind of renewal projects. With that, when we look at any project, no matter how small or how big, and a good example here is for the list that's up on the screen right now, is if you want to go and do a neighborhood project where there's a block captain who really wants to put green infrastructure in, wants some support, there's a whole host of things that are needed to be done, and it's shown here, whether it's through outreach and education and stakeholder engagement, conceptual designs. Every one of these things need to be done. Now the question is, who's going to do it? And right now it's very heavily into the water department is providing the education, providing the stakeholder engagement, et cetera, all the way down the list. The issue is who's going to do it in the future, and is it going to be anywhere from a local plumber who gets trained and understands how to put in a rain barrel or a rain garden? Is it a construction company that's also going to be doing the conceptual designs and perhaps the engineering, and another company doing the inspection, and private companies that will come in, and private nonprofits that come in and do the operation and maintenance, so this is all open, and we're watching different segments of the market look at different parts of this thing and try to figure out where they fit and how to make money at it. And as that grows, hopefully the government's end of this shrinks. That's our hope. And with it, we're hoping that we're nurturing and creating in Philadelphia an incredible group of skilled practitioners at all levels, blue collar and white collar, who can export this around the country and around the world. Very minor, but some of the other just issues, obviously seed money. Thank you, EPA, whenever you can, to provide money to the City of Philadelphia or to the other folks that are listening. Foundations have been very, so many foundations in the United States have been focused on green infrastructure and really get it that this is something for the future. Rockefeller Foundation in Philadelphia, William Penn Foundation, Pew Foundation, CERDNA, there's many of them, all providing support for this in one way or another. The last thing is this market-driven forces. One of the really interesting little things that have come out of all this is the LEED certification and how the office market in Philadelphia has becoming more and more LEED-driven. And I'd like to think, I don't know if this is true, a fact or not, but I'd like to think that the fact that these buildings are required to do stormwater management is kind of pushing them towards almost like a third of the credits that they need to get LEED certification. And they go that far, they say, what the heck, and they recognize that their building is worth more when it's LEED certified. So we're seeing these market-driven forces where whether through LEED or just through advertising after a building is constructed, and we see this a lot at the University of Pennsylvania and elsewhere, where they just use the fact that stormwater is being managed on their property as a big selling device for their students, for prospective students, for prospective tenants, and others. So it seems to be something that is building on itself.
And actually, Howard, we're seeing that with companies that are doing weatherization energy, starting to offer sort of the GI or green stormwater management for that building.
It is so closely linked. It's an interesting connection because the weatherization is largely for these homes built in the 1950s back to the 1870s, and you're working in the same property, the same set of issues, really, the same landowner or tenant, and having those businesses merge at some form certainly makes a lot of sense. So I just want to go back to this picture and just let you know that this is not easy stuff. This is not blink your eyes and all of a sudden this whole city turns green and we're managing all the stormwater here and there are no more overflows. But I just want to leave you with this thought, that it just may be riskier to continue doing business as usual than it is to change. And this is really hard stuff. And moving to this green infrastructure, and it looks great and it's pretty and it makes a lot of sense, but it is a hard thing to do, and I do recognize that. I recognize that change is hard, but continuing the process that we've been doing is really difficult in itself too. Give me a whole bunch of slides. I'm going to pass through some slides now, show you some of our work, maintenance activities going on. There's obviously a new rain garden that was constructed. Not as pretty when they're new. Maintenance. Here's a what we call this a green inlet, because we build this just upstream of the gray inlet, of the usual inlet that takes the water to our combined sewer, but instead it captures the water first and then distributes it to a street tree trench or some other BMP. Maintenance activities, again, just involving local companies.
I like that picture because it reminds me of spring.
Yes.
We're done with snow.
So, I have a few more pictures here I'm going to pass through, but Dominique, we're just about done with this presentation and ready for some more questions.
Okay, great. And once again, we are getting comments that it's a great program, and we're certainly pleased that Philadelphia and a number of our other communities around the country are taking these perceived risks to provide the answers not only for Philly but but for others, many communities out there that don't have the ability to pursue these types of solutions. So I want to thank you again for that. We got a number of questions, and I think we are going to try to end a little bit early today, since we're typically dividing these presentations among a number of speakers, and we certainly have appreciation for the commissioner's time and everyone's time on this webcast. We'll share some of the answers from the others coming up. But there was one question about including churches or other civic organizations in some of these activities. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. We've actually been able to work very closely with many of our churches. I think in the first 2 rounds of our grant program, we awarded quite a number of churches. We've done a lot of outreach with them, recognizing the change in our billing method when we started that in July of 2010 certainly impacted many of our churches. They were the classic example of, a small water meter, so historically they were paying very small stormwater fees, and own a lot of property, have a lot of impervious surfaces, big parking lot and a big church building. So they saw an increase in their fees, and what we were able to do is really work with a lot of churches up front, provide assistance in terms of, we actually work with many of our customers and provide concept design assistance. So we're getting out there, we're doing, walking through the site and providing them with, a conceptual stormwater management plan, giving them an idea of what stormwater management would look like on their property and approximately how much it would cost. And that, I think, has been really beneficial for churches and other nonprofit groups that don't have a lot of available money to go engage with an engineer right away. Then we've been able to usher many of those impacted churches into our grant program, and they've been, they're so excited, and we're really excited to see what these projects will look like in the future.
Okay, here's one, because we do appreciate that we've got a large community listening in on the webcast, and one of these are 2 questions. One is, Philly is a large city. And as I mentioned, many don't have the capacity to sort of pursue these types of solutions. Can you provide any advice or maybe examples you've come across that would work for small to medium-sized cities? The other question is from some of our sister communities out west. Hey, we're more arid, and we're interested in approaches that are not the big storms.
Great.
I know those are 2 different questions, but I wanted to sort of give an appreciation that there are others listening in that are trying to get some help.
Yeah, it's funny when I go to conferences and I listen to Pat Mulroy from Las Vegas or Adele from Los Angeles and get to understand the difference point of view of green infrastructure, because they have such different needs, and it turns out that we have a lot in common. Like one of the things we learned from Las Vegas is this whole concept of supporting how do you use water utility dollars to support, in their case, converting a lawn on a residential property into something that doesn't use quite as much water, and put a deed restriction on that property. And in Los Angeles, their question is how do we capture and store the rainwater so that it's available when it's not raining. So they're similar yet very different needs, and similar but very different solutions. But we still have a lot that I think we can learn from each other. And basically, what's the same among all those 3 cities is that water is important. That no matter what version the water is in, whether it's rainwater runoff, groundwater, water sitting in Lake Mead, it is a vital resource, and it needs to be commoditized at a value that is somewhere close to its real value. And what the trick in Philadelphia, among everything else that we've done, really is that commoditization of the rainwater, is the fact that there is a charge to it now. The charge is probably not equal to the environmental harm that CSO overflows cause, but it is a charge that is about as maxed out in terms of affordability as we can go at this time with our customers, and it's all a big balance, and we're looking to see how to take that commodity and do things with it through grants and other things to encourage the behavior that we want. And that's really the same thing for Las Vegas and Los Angeles and many other cities. And let me also say, just because I also know that there are a lot of cities where green infrastructure is not necessarily the solution, and there are cities, even similar to Philadelphia, with combined sewer overflows that have invested greatly in gray infrastructure and tunnels. And there is a place for that also in the vast set of solutions for looking nationally or worldwide on how you deal with these issues. But it all comes down to there are an awful lot of wet weather issues. Sometimes too much water, sometimes too little water, sometimes overflows, whatever it may be. And there's a lot to be learned amongst the different cities, but there is also some respect that's needed for each city to find their own solution.
Great. And speaking of commoditization, did I say that right? I challenged myself. A question, how did you engage the community in the changes to the fee structure, and how did you handle opposition? You guys were at the forefront of revisiting parking lots and revisiting stormwater in this regard versus the meter, which really doesn't address the stormwater need.
Well, it's interesting because this really started. This movement really started before green infrastructure was really something that we were even thinking about. It was really something that was just about equity, and some of our customers, particularly the ones with hotels or large apartment buildings, fairly small footprint, fairly large water meter, sometimes dual water meters, who are getting hit with most of the stormwater bills, who are complaining, saying that there must be a fairer, more equitable way to do this. Unfortunately, through the 1990s and even in the beginning of the 2000s, we didn't have the computer capability to map out and analyze every property for impervious cover and move to this process. And then suddenly we did, and we created this process, and we went back to the public, because not only was it good in terms of fairness and equity, but it was also good in terms of everywhere we were going with the green infrastructure program. However, when we got closer and closer, what we realized is that there are a number of our very good customers who were moving from an area where they maybe they had a 3 to 5 acre impervious covered lot with a 1-story industrial building that's used for storage and warehousing, and maybe they had a bathroom. So they were paying $10 a month for stormwater, and after we changed our process, they were suddenly paying Erin $500, $1,000 a month, and they were angry, and and they had a right to be angry, even though this was fair and equitable, and they were getting away with an awful lot for a long time. The changeover is something that is very difficult politically in a city like Philadelphia, or I would venture to guess any of the cities that are listening. And those customers need to be paid attention to, and they did make life hard for us for a number of years, and hopefully we've reached agreement with them, and we're supporting them in making the changes that we need and they need in order to accomplish a greener Philadelphia.
Yeah, and to kind of jump on what Howard's saying, in my opinion, I think we did, as a government entity, we did a ton of upfront outreach, a ton of workshops and meetings, and just as much as we could to engage our customers up front before we made the transition. but it still wasn't enough. And every time that I am talking to another city or a municipality interested in transitioning to a parcel-based fee for stormwater, I can't stress enough how important advertising and working with your customers, getting them engaged up front in the process is so important. You can't do it enough. I felt like we did it enough, and it wasn't enough.
And there's always we sent out trial bills so people would know what was coming, and still they didn't respond. But once the real bill came, that's when the politics really started.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually worked for the city of Austin and was responsible for a program for mandatory water rationing enforced by the local police in the summer months. And so I can certainly have some appreciation, as I'm sure many listening. Here's a real easy question, because I think we are about out of time. I'm going to sort of call it. How can we get a copy of the design manual? I know that's an easy one. Your Green Street, I believe this is your Green Street manual.
Erin and I are looking at each other. I have one right here on my desk. I'm sure it's available on our website. And our website is phillywatersheds.org. And if it's not available right now, it's going to, believe me, we'll get it available within 24 hours on that site.
Great. I think I was able to get it. So,
okay, good.
For those who can't, just get in touch with us through this contact information. It's right up on your screen now. You see the speaker contact information, the website, our email addresses. I really appreciate.
There's a price for that. The price is to after you review it, to if you have any better ideas for us on how to do green infrastructure, to please let us know.
Well, I kind of love the social networking, thus this technology, and growing this community of practice. So yes, we're certainly interested as well at EPA about what kinds of other similar programs are out there and design manuals, and particularly I'll say for Green Streets. So if everybody could commit to that, and I think we're interested in hearing what communities out there are interested in certain approaches you heard today, more information, P3s, very, very adaptable P3s. You heard different types of approaches today. There may be others out there. We want to hear about it, and we want to also facilitate transfer of that information. So with that, I'm going to thank our speakers, Commissioner Neukrug and Erin Williams, for sharing what is really, I know, a vast amount of work and adaptive management. I appreciate the time you gave us for today's webcast.
Thank you, Dominique, and the EPA for believing in us, helping us along to really make Philadelphia a green city.
And everyone's invited for cheesesteaks, right? I do also want to note we have another exciting webcast coming up. Mark your calendars, March 18th from 1 to 3. We're going to bring back our bankers. We want to get back to the money. Although this is about more than the money, we're going to have leading financing experts who have been invited from White House Council for Environmental Quality, along with both global and local lending institutions. Again, to kind of get into the nuts and bolts, the how-tos, the benefits, how does it work? How does it work in terms of development of local businesses and jobs? And that's really what we're going for, as you heard from our guests from Philadelphia. It's about a sustainable Philadelphia. It's about economic redevelopment and jobs and water, which sustains us, right? So again, thanks everyone. And with that, we're going to end today's webcast.